Public comments from the audience regarding items not on the agenda. This portion of the agenda allows an individual the opportunity to address the GSA on any items not on closed session, consent calendar, public hearing, or agency business. Under state regulations, no action can be taken on non-agenda items, including issues raised under this agenda item. Members of the public should be aware of this when addressing the GSA regarding items not specifically referenced on this agenda. Is there any public comments for items not on the agenda?
There are no raised hands
I don't see any.
online.
We'll move on to consent calendar. All matters listed under consent calendar are considered routine and may be approved by one action of the agency unless a request for removal for discussion or explanation is received prior to the time the agency votes on the motion to adopt. We have one item as the adoption of the minutes, May 26th meeting. Is there any public comments on consent calendar?
No raised hands, sir.
No hands. So we need a motion to.
Motion to approve.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Okay, agency business. Review fiscal year 2026-2027 budget for the Arroyo Seco Groundwater Sustainability Agency and provide staff direction, staff report.
So Chairman Thor, members of the board, you've got before you our proposed budget for the coming year. It does reflect an increase in costs associated with staff time primarily. Just to note, Mr. Yates will continue to serve as our technical consultant. It's a good thing. They provide that continuity. He's no longer with Todd. We've hired him directly, as you guys have essentially hired me directly, with both of us with professional services agreements. The costs are largely administrative. You know, Gus provides some definitive technical expertise. He serves on our SMC TAC, and he provides additional resources as we go through various issues associated with management of the Arroyo Seco co-management area. Notably, there are some costs this year to handle our next round of our GSP. We're in our 5-year cycle. We're in the process now of updating that GSP. There were some corrective actions that came out of the first 5-year plan. Some of those are gonna require amendments. So it's important that we have both Gus to be able to take care of Mr. Yates, take care of the technical aspects, and myself and others are reviewing that. So it is a little increase in staff time, but it's well worth it. It being the update of the GSP form the foundation for management of water resources in the Arroyo Seco Code for us. So it's an important aspect, but it will also spill over into the forebay. So I would recommend that you approve the budget for the coming year. Be happy to answer any questions.
I did have a quick question, Curtis. I noticed on the salaries, there's certain months are higher than others. Is there a particular reason for that, or I know it's most are 8,000, and then there's some that are 10.
Sometimes it reflect the SMC TAC meetings. Sometimes it reflect the workflow like this. There are some months where I'm definitely going to be busier with doing the GSP updates, and so it requires more time. That's why it's not just a constant. I try to reflect and estimate when I would be spending more time, when Gus would be spending more time.
Okay.
That's it.
It's not a huge difference. I just noticed there was.
Yeah, it wasn't flat.
Wasn't flat.
Any public comment?
No raised hands.
Okay, so we need a motion to approve the 2026-2027 budget.
Motion to approve.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried. Next order of business, receive Arroyo Seco Groundwater Sustainability Agency General Manager Status Report, oral report.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I have 3 items for you. The first item is to just back brief you all on our process and progress relative to developing a demand management framework. We had a good advisory committee meeting. Mr. Yates laid out his proposed approach. In essence, the SMC TAC had kind of taken on this idea of looking at the groundwater basins in the upper valley and the forebay, developing some sort of framework which we might work towards having the ability to do demand management if it was required. And in that process, the Salinas Valley Basin GSA's consultants, Montgomery and Associates, used their integrated Salinas Valley model to look at projections going forward. So there's model data that they would like snip it out 40 years worth and go 40 years, go 40 years, and then project what groundwater levels would be like. And what they found was that there was surprisingly a decreasing trend. And so that intrigued Mr. Yates. I've kind of told you this before. So he got into digging through the details. Well, as the SMC TAC was trying to put together some sort of framework, at 15 wells that maybe in below the minimum threshold might be a trigger for us then go into some form of demand management. That was like the initial, you got to do something. Maybe that's not the right thing. You all directed us to go forward and begin to develop a more rigorous process around developing a demand management program. So in lieu of using the model and using model data to make projections, Gus has taken Mr. Yates has taken a more data-driven approach and looked at the data leading up to current times and over a long period of time. And there has been indeed a decrease, small, but noticeable decrease in the amount of average recharge over decades in the Arroyo Seco. That may be climate related. It's definitely rainfall related, but it's small. And it may result in, it may result in a foot or two of difference over 10 years, that kind of thing. Or it may not. It might correct itself. We might get to a wet period. But the point is that Mr. Yates took data and developed an approach and said, okay, we're going to be data driven and we're going to look at long periods. We haven't exactly decided what the period of length is going to be to determine whether there's a trend. And then if that trend continues, right, we'll need to consider at what point we might enter into a demand management program. With the idea being this, we have minimum thresholds. That's where we don't want to go below. And we got this measurable objective. That's where we want to be. The measurable objective is we're not going to be there all the time. It gets really wet. We fill up the groundwater basin. The Arroyo Seco works really well. When we get rainfall, it fills. We pump it, draws down, fills, draws down. Yeah, so it works pretty well, provided that we have the rainfall to recharge. So if we get into a really long period of declining, not a drought, but declining groundwater recharge that might impact how we operate. And, instead of like the groundwater basin rebounding to the top, to the measurable objective, we rebound to the middle. And it stays like that, or that it slowly declines. Some point along that continuum, I don't know, 50 years from now, we might want to say, hey, it's time to implement maybe a 5% reduction in pumping. With the idea being is that those trends may change over time, but we need to have something in place, some sort of program to maintain sustainability so that we stay sustainable for the long haul. Here's a really important point though. It's not the up and down on a year to year or even a couple years. We're gonna have droughts. We may drop below the minimum threshold, but as long as we rebound, that's fine. But what we want to do is we want to look at those trends over time. And so we made this first presentation to your advisory committee. They took it all in. They had some questions, so Gus and I are kind of working through it. But I think what we need to do with the advisory committee is really provide some visuals so they can see what it is we're talking about and understand what a projection might look like in the future if a long-term decline in recharge occurred and we started having the groundwater basin not recharge close to the measurable objective, but more in the middle of our kind of operating band. Because when you're in that middle and you have a severe drop, we're gonna drop below the minimum threshold. So we wanna have something that points to us managing the groundwater basin in an appropriate way. So that's where we are with that one. So I'll pause and ask if you guys have any questions there.
I have none.
Okay. Second item is equally important, and that's really this GSP update. As I mentioned before, in terms of the budget, it is the document that provides the legal framework which we manage the groundwater resources in our region. And so it's important. I think we have a good GSP. We have some areas where we got corrective action requirements from DWR, water quality being one. It may be a labeling or an approach, but that one's pretty manageable. Yeah. The one that I have got my eye on and watching closely is a integrated surface water measurable objective. Integrated surface water is a difficult thing for the DWR to come to grips with in terms of how do they write guidance. We've been waiting for guidance for 5 years. And, every single groundwater basin is going to be a little different. This sandy bottom river that we have is nothing like the Carmel River bottom rocky sandy soil, nothing like the Arroyo Seco upper portion. The watershed, nothing like the Russian River, and certainly nothing like the San Joaquin River. So each individual groundwater basin has got these issues associated with this integrated surface water and how groundwater pumping may or may not adversely impact surface water. And we've yet to receive direction. So we have taken upon ourselves to provide more detail, go into a little bit more look, and I think we're headed in the right direction. Again, in the Arroyo Seco cone, mainly because of the Arroyo Seco River, we don't really have a problem there. In fact, there's really no integrated surface water to speak of until we get closer to the Salinas River. Most of the watershed is separated from the groundwater elevation, yeah, and the percolation rates are so high that it just whooshes through, so it's really not integrated. But the Salinas River and the lower portion of the Arroyo Seco, yeah, the groundwater elevations definitely come into play. And that river system is managed. We've been releasing water from the reservoirs for 50 years, so it gets kind of complicated. And as, again, like all things, as long as we have enough water coming in the form of rainfall, we're going to be good. But it's in those areas where we don't. And what does that mean in terms of potentially habitat? And this then spills into that what you've heard me talk about in terms of those groundwater dependent ecosystems. So there's a lot of environmental scrutiny being placed on both the integrated surface water and the groundwater dependent ecosystems. So, we're mindful, Gus and I are both mindful of that as we look at these items and try to craft a new or revised GSP. So that will be coming to you over the summer. So be prepared. I'm not sure if it's going to be July or August, but we will have a public hearing because we'll have to re-up our GSP on those amendments, meet the legal requirements and the like, but know that that's coming. So I'm going to pause and any questions?
When is the updated GSP due? When is the updated GSP? When is that due?
Well, it's due the end of January 2027. So we need to have all this process this summer so that we can approve it and drop it off in DWR's hands the beginning of the winter 2027. So we're in our 5-year loop. The update is relatively minor. We will be at least noting that we've got into a demand management approach, but nothing concrete in this 5-year update. That's coming in the next one. But these corrective actions are important, and I want you to be aware of them. And we're watching them carefully and working with Montgomery and Associates in terms of crafting both the data and the narrative around it. Okay, so no other questions?
No.
Move on. My third and final thing to talk about is the proposed projects that are being reviewed by the advisory committee of the Salinas Valley Basin GSA to correct seawater intrusion. Probably and it really is about seawater intrusion. I mean, we can get more water either in the form of desalted brackish water or, taking some additional water off the Salinas River, or even reoperating the reservoirs if we want to go down that road. But ultimately, we need an additional supply of water, and we need to be able to stop seawater intrusion. We need to address the east side deficiencies and seawater intrusion. And seawater intrusion by far is a more difficult issue to deal with. Right now, the only project that really looks viable is the brackish water restoration, the BGR project, where they have wells that are extracting brackish water close to the coast, treating it, and then injecting it in front of the seawater intrusion front with fresh water. So building a mound and a trough at the same time. Makes sense? But there's all kinds of questions, not the least of which is how much it's going to cost. And, by and large, everyone's kind of hung up on the size of the number. There are technical issues, and we're not anywhere near the end, but DWR is expecting something from the Salinas Valley Basin GSA this summer. We need to move something forward, but it doesn't mean that we're at a point where we've got to nail down, this is the project we're going to build solution. We have some good ideas, and we have some projects that'll work, but there's going to be, I know at least of three other projects that are in the wings that haven't been fully developed yet, that may be a better mousetrap. I don't know. Haven't seen them yet. So I will continue to brief you. The advisory committee is scheduled to meet on the 16th of next month with the intent of developing a recommendation to go to their board of directors. If I had a guess, right now, I would say that there is going to be a recommendation, but the conditions and the caveats that come along with that recommendation are going to be way longer and more rigorous than the project itself. There's just a number of the advisory committee members that are not going to want to support anything that can't be afforded. Okay, I understand that. So that's a caveat. There's some committee members that have got other projects that they want to see come forward. They want to have an opportunity. Okay, so that's going to be a caveat. I just think there's going to be a lot more caveats than actual rigor around the project. And that's okay. I think that's where we're at. We still don't know, for instance, that the injection wells that they're proposing are actually going to work. The extraction wells are pretty straightforward, yeah? I mean, we kind of know how to take water out of the ground, right?
Yeah.
We've been doing that a long time. But to put it back in, and to put it back in the magnitude that we're talking about, and with the complexities of the way the pressure geology is built, I just don't know. So it's an unknown that needs to be worked through for that to really be a viable option. And the cost for the project and the cost to treat the water is really high. I mean, we're in the $1 billion of, the number that I saw for the whole thing, that's to build the brackish water desal project, injection wells, and get water over to the east side is like $1.4 million. Billion. 1.4 billion. So it's a lot of money. All right, so what does that mean? Well, that means that, we make a recommendation and to the GSA's board of directors, and it's important for that board of directors to move forward because I think we want to maintain control over that subbasin. And because if we don't follow through with DWR, they'll go on probation, and eventually DWR can come in and take over that groundwater basin, subbasin. But we don't know what that means, and nor has anybody said exactly what that will mean. in terms of demand management, because that's all DWR has, right? They only have one switch. Pull back on the pumping, that's it. And so that's, that is probably not the best way to go about dealing with seawater intrusion, because we've already demonstrated through modeling that even if you stop all the pumping everywhere in the valley, you don't stop seawater intrusion. You don't correct it. So demand management is not the answer. Okay, so having said all that, the idea is to get something to go to the board of directors. My fingers are crossed and we'll get there, but no guarantees. That is my report, Mr. Chairman.
So is there any public comments?
I'm not seeing any hand raises this afternoon.
I don't either. Any agency comments, boards, questions?
No.
Okay. Receive and file, adjourn the meeting.
That's it. Thanks, sir. That was an easy one.